back out to the wider economy. And then that develops through the whole food and drink sector, is worth in Scotland about 14.5 billion. I mean, that's counting everything, it's counting our salmon, our whisky, but agriculture, red meat, the whole lot, it's a huge part of the economy. It's the biggest part. Food and drink in Scotland is the biggest part of the Scottish economy. We have to make sure we look after that. Yeah,
and people, foreigners in particular, they will travel thousands of miles to see this stunning scenery and to eat our phenomenal food and drink. And so we kind of want everybody in Scotland and the UK to have that same passion for our home-produced food as international.
And farmers and crofters, I don't think we're asking much, but maybe just a little bit of recognition that what Scotland's built on has a lot to do with food production.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you do some B&B here on the farm. What do some of your visitors and guests say about it?
The people we tend to get here are here because they want to come to a farmhouse holiday, so that they're tuned in anyway. Yeah. You do get a number of people that come up and they'll look at the view and think this is fantastic, and then enough a lot of them want to go up the hill and have a look at the Highlanders, so they think that's great. So and then when you start explaining to them the benefits they bring, you see them really listening in, and it's actually really good to speak to them, and that's why we enjoyed doing Open Farm Sunday last year.
And every person who goes away from that with a positive message then spreads that positive message to somebody else, and yes, in a sense it's a slow drip process, but it's still making a difference because more and more people are getting that message. But
it's important we get that early on, and one of our biggest problems is we've got such a disconnect now from agriculture, because 40-50 years ago you're probably only one generation away from a farmer or somebody that worked in the land, so you understood it. Now we've got generations of, and through the education process as well, we'll have teachers that have not the same interest in what's happening in agriculture, and I think we're missing an opportunity here. The education process has got so much that could help with what we're doing and understanding some of the facts of what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, again, another kind of reference back to a previous episode. The very first episode of the On Farm podcast actually was focusing on RET, the Royal Highland Education Trust, and the work they do, which is fantastic, and fundraising to make sure that they can continue into the future. But we've talked about the Highland cattle that you have and the biodiversity sort of positives that they deliver, and then we've talked about grassland in general and the carbon sequestration and the positives of that. Can you think of some other examples, like from you and the family here, specifically on this farm, that are making things that you do that are making a positive impact?
I think a number of years ago we bought a direct driller. So I mean, we used to plough all the fields we try and finish as many lambs as we can, and we've put turnips in or put rape or kale in, to finish them through the winter. And you can imagine the sort of topography we have round here. As soon as you go in there with a plough, the topsoil is actually that shallow. You've got stones everywhere. So we go in with a plough. You plough it, then you take the stones off, and then you level it, then you take the stones off, then you level it again. You take the stones off it again. Then you sow it, and then you've probably still got to take stones off before you roll it. So
stones have got an amazing ability to just multiply somehow, don't they?
Absolutely. So hence the reason there's so many dikes around this farm. That gives you usually a good indication of how stony a farm is. So so through frustration we thought, is there a better way to do this? And we actually bought a New Zealand driller, an Aitchison driller. So we now, and this is again, and it's a hot topic as well, because we're relying glyphosate for this. So when it comes to an old pasture, we spray the field with glyphosate to burn everything off, and then the next day we actually go in, we put fertiliser on, and then we drill it, and that's the job done. So we're not actually ploughing, so we're not releasing carbon and nitrous oxide, so that's a big benefit. Because our topsoil is so shallow, we're not ploughing that good topsoil down, we're using that good topsoil at the top to actually grow the crop. So it's improving the soil health by doing that. Another thing we've done recently, this will be the third year now, is we've soil mapped the farm. So over 5 years we'll have soil mapped the whole farm and the sort of the lower ground part of it anyway, and we're using variable rate application for lime. With doing that and doing the soil testing, we found that we're actually through the roof in phosphates, to the detriment of some of the uptake of some of the nutrients to the plants. So for the next few years we'll not be putting phosphates on, so that's an immediate saving, about £30 a tonne.
Yeah, saving you money and saving an unnecessary application. Yeah, that's a good point actually, because there's a lot of discussion in general farming circles at the moment about technology and I suppose in particular data. And so it's about not just using data to save money, albeit that's a massive positive, but using data to do things in a more clever fashion to benefit
to assist in climate change. Yes, absolutely. And it is working, and we've seen a difference now. So we're not actually disturbing that soil. We're not losing the quality of that soil. So again, when it comes to the better we can keep our soil health, the better chance we'll have of storing more carbon in the soil.
Because it's the same adage, which might be an old one, but it doesn't lose its value, I don't think, which is that actually every farmer is farming for the next generation as a custodian of the land, just for the time that they're on the planet, and then they're passing it on to somebody else. And that every farmer that I've ever met has had that philosophy. Yeah. And that's why it makes me angry when I hear people bashing farmers so much, because I think if you knew the truth and you knew that actually that's everybody's philosophy, then you'd understand that actually nobody is applying things or doing things
to be detrimental.
No, absolutely.
Because you always want, when it comes to the next generation, you always want to leave it better than what you picked it up on. Because why would you do it any other way? Because it's the future generations that's going to lose out if you don't look after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And using technology to help that has been great, because it's actually a saving in time with us. But when it comes to environmental benefit, it's huge as well. A big thing as well, because we're not ploughing it, the sort of biodiversity that's still actually there when the kale's growing is amazing. You still get mice and everything still running about through there. It's great to see, because you're not actually ploughing that soil down.
Now, you have mentioned another word. Gosh, these words that I find difficult to pronounce. Glyphosate. Yes. Can you just tell us, for the uninitiated, what it is?
Okay, glyphosate is a chemical that's probably known better 40 odd years ago as Roundup. Roundup was what was coming out, and it was a very expensive chemical when it came out under licence. It's a chemical that burns all surface vegetation. It goes right down to the roots, so kills the plants completely. But it's under a lot of scrutiny just now, because there was a case in the States where they thought that there was an issue that possibly could be carcinogenic. That's still not been proven yet, or it doesn't seem to have been proven yet. But because it's making the headlines, the problem is we've got a risk of it now being banned in possibly 2022 or 2023. Now, if that does happen, then for our own situation here, I see our farm would start going back again, because we'd have to either go back to the plough, getting people to help us and assist us with lifting stones and all this carry on again. It probably wouldn't happen. So I would see our soil health actually going back the way. So the environmental benefit of retaining glyphosate for the right reasons is still, paramount, and I think we need to make sure we get that message across.
It highlights one thing that always kind of sticks in my mind is, the people who say, "Oh, well, I eat avocados because they're so good for you." You think, well, but it's coming from the other side of the world, and the reason I'm using that analogy is that actually sometimes it's just impossible to do everything that everybody wants you to do, because if you did that, you'd end up doing nothing and not moving forward. So yes, you use glyphosate because it's essential, and if you didn't do it, then some of the other practices you'd have to use would be detrimental to the climate. So, and as you said, nothing has been proven about it. So it's safe. It is safe for use.
Yes, it is. I mean, they said years ago, one of the safest things and one of the most sensitive animals to things like chemicals was fish, and fish like koi carp. And yet they were, at that time, when in the early days, they were using glyphosate to kill a lot of the vegetation in the top of ponds, and the carp were still fine. So I mean, when it came to an issue, it was deemed to be extremely safe. And there's so many other things that are so dangerous that we know is damaging to our health, well, like a pint, some of us like too many, but it doesn't, that's not very, if you drink too much coffee, exactly, smoking, we know that, absolutely categoric, but there's no risk of that being banned, So it's about, it's about weighing up the evidence and the science, and we need to use the science. And I think, to be honest, farmers underestimate their own abilities when it comes to speaking to the public, because if the surveys that we've done in the last number of years, farmers are one of the most trusted people that you can speak to. Now, that's fantastic to know that.
And what do you think? There's been a lot of talk lately about, certainly climate change is the topic of 2020, if not the topic of the decade. So what are the next steps? I know that people are making a huge effort, and we probably struggle to find anybody that's not making an effort, but there's also a lot of chat about, yes, we're making an effort, but perhaps we could do more. So what is the more?
The more is trying to incentivise people to make changes like some of us are doing. And I think there's a lot of people, particularly in the livestock side, that could maybe do a little bit more. What we're talking about, the soil health earlier on. So that's a massive lift, a huge environmental benefit, but it's also got a productivity benefit as well. And it helps the bottom line. And generally speaking, if you do something that's going to help the bottom line, a farmer will jump at it. That's the first thing they go do. If that's going to help my bottom line, I'll have a go. So I think that comes down to future policy decisions. And we've got a chance now, and like it or loathe it, we're coming out of Europe, and that has a lot of risks, as we know, attached to it. But there's also maybe a huge opportunity there where we can develop a policy that actually suits Scottish agriculture and Scottish agriculture alone, in that we can maybe have some financial stability still there, but when it comes to support farmers and crofters to make decisions that will help the environment, mitigate against climate change, and maybe help the bottom line as well. So have that policy incentive. And if you can incentivise people to make that difference, well, it gets them on board and thinking, this is actually working quite well. Why did I not do this years ago? So it's trying to get everybody else on board. And there'll be some out there that will be, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just, well, sorry, but we need to do more. We're in pole position when it comes to climate change in the world. We've got a fantastic story to tell here. We are green. I'm sure when the science comes out correctly, we'll find that a lot of Scottish agriculture is actually carbon positive. And what better marketing tool could we have than that? But if we keep on the front foot all the time and keep driving it forward, it's a great opportunity for us to grasp. If we know Scottish agriculture as a whole is carbon positive, well, that would be fantastic.
An amazing story.
It would be tremendous. And I think we need to have governments and politicians supporting us in this.
Yes. And I think also, knowledge transfer and best practice is really important as well, because I think there could be farmers out there who are thinking, well, I want to make a difference, but actually, this kind of thing's new to me because I've been in my own kind of bubble for a while, which is fine. But I just need a bit of support, and I think that will be critical as well. From a lot of the organisations that you've just mentioned, but saying, right, well, this is what it's not just about policy. We're not just giving you a rule that you've got to abide by, but we're also going to facilitate you to get there
to help you get on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I just took out the soft bale down to the tops as well.
Did you? All right. Okay. Is there a feeder down there?
Yeah. And then I'll go and sort Kieran's dogs out.
Excellent. Katrina's 22, and in fact she's 23. I better get that right. She's doing an absolute tremendous job.
Absolutely. So she's in charge when you're not here.
Yes, she is.
How does? I mean, you've obviously got a very forward-thinking attitude to climate change and how we make a positive impact, but at 23, her attitude, even from yours, is probably quite different because she's grown up in a different world. So how is her thinking different?
It's sort of more positive thinking in many ways than what I probably was at that age. I mean, I know when I started doing this job, and I was going away and I was coming home at night and I was thinking, well, why have you done this? Why have you done that? And now it seems to be when I go away and I come back, I'm thinking, why did I not think of that? But I think the key thing is Katrina's focus at the minute is still 100% on the livestock and making sure the welfare's correct, making sure they're getting fed correctly. And at that age, I actually think that's where your focus should be as well. Although the influence that's coming from probably myself, others in the family and the wider public, we're recognising there is issues with environment and climate change. So all that's now getting taken on board far more now with Katrina than it would ever been with me when I was 23.
Yes, yeah.
Food product, I mean, the one thing we cannot do without food. So why that's not more in the curriculum in our education systems beats me, because I think it's really important that we understand where our food comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, Martin, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. It's been really fascinating. We're standing in a glorious spot. My legs are so warm because the sun is right on them, and I actually don't want to. I don't want to go. I'm standing in snow, but I feel cosy warm. I almost don't want to leave. But no, it's been really useful chatting to you. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. You're very welcome.